Okay, so my question is that, one, do you think that the current state of affairs, especially in the U.S. media, and especially like Fox News and Bill O'Reilly and and the likes, and how they're portraying Muslims and Islam, and as well as Bill Maher, who's considered a leftist, the statements they're making. Now, I agree. I'm not denying that there's problems and terrorism and violence and all that, but when they associate these problems with a culture and with an entire group of people of 1.5 billion people, do you think that this is inherent to the culture and the religion itself, or do you think that
first
this
of all,
is part of the U.S. agenda and part of the the U.S. Propaganda machine to pump up the Americans, in their attacks against the Middle East?
So first of all, I'm gonna at least reject part of the premise, because while Bill Maher is wrong on any number of things, and may in fact be wrong in his commentary on Islam, I don't think I've ever seen him or any of the other people who are accused of it actually say that all 1.5 billion Muslims are the problem. As a matter of fact, most of them tend to go out of their way on occasion, because this is a frequent criticism.
But they associate like 20-30%, and that's
because that's what the numbers are. That's what the numbers are. If you look at the statistics for how many Muslims are in favor of Sharia law, how many Muslims thinks that apostates should be killed in specific countries, it varies from country to country. It's worse in Jordan and Egypt than it is in Israel, etc. Those are the numbers. Now, are they inaccurately representing statistics? Probably. It happens all the time. I wouldn't expect, I think almost anybody's going to end up misrepresenting statistics. There's no easy way to talk about this. And the problem, hang on. Part of the problem here is that you have a whole bunch of people who are identifying with the same label and the same holy book, and this applies to Islam and it applies to Christianity, who have different views. And if they're not taking steps to distinguish themselves from each other, then they don't get to complain that they got a little paint on them when we're painting the problem. The brush may be a little broad on occasion. We should definitely work to make sure the brush isn't any broader than it needs to be. But also, these members of religious groups that sanction particular religious or support particular religious identities need to do a better job of distinguishing themselves.
I agree with you completely, but when the President of the United States condemns actions of ISIS and how they killed the journalists, which I condemn equally as much, and everybody in the Middle East would equally condemn.
Everybody in the Middle East would equally condemn?
Absolutely.
I just find that to be the most patently absurd. You're exaggerating.
I don't want to say everybody. I would say the vast majority. Let me retract.
I'd be happier with that as your personal estimation than you trying to plant a flag on everybody.
But when when the murders took place of these, I'm sure you've heard of them, the Barakat kids, the wife and the sister and their husband. Not a comment from the President of the United States on this. And these are American citizens killed on American soil for hate, for obvious. Nothing was commented on that. Forget about the legal aspects, but the families of these people have been crying to the government for them to say something, to do to any action without any hope. So doesn't that reflect?
Are you talking about the case of the 3 individuals that were slaughtered by that atheist guy?
Yeah, that's the case.
Yeah.
I'm not blaming that on atheism. Don't get me wrong.
Okay, so what do you want the president to say?
No, I'm saying, doesn't that show you the bias that I'm talking about?
No, it doesn't, because one of these things is an international incident that is relevant to specific aspects of conflicts that we're dealing with, which may be used as propaganda. There's no denying that. And the other one, so far, is still unsettled. It's an ongoing case. And the evidence points to the motivations not necessarily being a hate crime. It could very well be, and it could very well be shown to be. I'm not making any declaration about anybody's motives. My point here is to not necessarily assume motives. But when we talk about these crimes that take place, there are certain things that the president is likely to comment on, and certain things he's not. And he's not always going to get it right. I'm not here saying he's always gotten it right. But when you extend that to the implications in one of your earlier questions, as if there is the propaganda machine, which there's no denying, propaganda is going to exist everywhere, is in fact some sort of conspiracy. I don't get that.
No. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just saying that this is part of the general. I mean, because you have to admit, nationalism and patriotism is equally dangerous as any dogmatic religion is.
No, I don't actually have to admit.
At the end of the day, dogmatism
No.
is dogmatism.
I absolutely don't have to admit that.
Why?
Because there's a difference. There's a difference between patriotism and jingoism. And what we're talking about.
But at the end of the day, you, Matt, and me, Mohammed, we are human beings, citizens of this planet. We share one planet. At the end of the day, if we're going to devise the whole problem I have with religion is its divisiveness.
I agree that religion is divisive. I also agree that the current state that we have with different nations is divisive, but not all divisiveness is equal. And so when you make a statement that nationalism and patriotism are just as bad as religious dogma, that is something that I do not accept.
I think he means hyper-nationalism, hyper-patriotism.
That's why I said there's a distinction between patriotism and jingoism is the hyper-nationalism that would be dogmatic, that would be a corollary to.
How so? You're saying that it's not as bad. How so? How is
liking your country and being proud of your country and your heritage does not necessarily mean that you are willing to kill for it or die for it. Being patriotic does not mean that you are therefore under any kind of dogmatic, locked-in position to remain that way. Okay? This is why I drew a distinction between patriotism and jingoism. Jingoism is the hyper-patriotism where you are basically devoted to the state in the same way that you would be to a god.
Yeah.
That...
No.
I think this is just semantics.
But
but I'm not saying that you shouldn't be proud of your heritage. I'm saying that when that pride comes at the expense of other cultures, of other heritage, that's the dogmatism I'm talking about, and which is no different from religion.
And they just put up the credits. I apologize. We have run out of time completely for the show.